Hey friends and book lovers, welcome. Today I wanted to check in on the lofty reading goals that I set in the beginning of the year. I may have accomplished, or at least be on my way to accomplishing some of them, and some of them I kind of sort of maybe completely failed. Maybe. So I'm not sure if I'm setting myself up in this video for a ton of pain and ridicule, or if I still have time to realign some priorities, but I think that next year I'm going to try to be definitely more strategic on some of these goals. Now in my reading goals video I had 5 reading goals and some channel goals. Today I'm going to be addressing the reading goals because that's kind of what I'm more interested in. I'm always going to have channel goals and those are always going to be changing, and I'll talk about those I'm sure in 2022 as well, but I definitely want to talk about those 5 reading goals. And I also had a top 10 like standalone books to read and then a top 10 series to read for the year, and I kind of want to see where I am with those, maybe, but I don't think it's good. I think the standalone books are faring much better, but the series definitely got derailed with like what I wanted to read, so we'll see. Hopefully next year will be better, but let's dive in at least to those 5 reading goals. My first reading goal was my book count. And I do think all of us start with how many books do I want to read this year as one of our first goals, and mine was 60 books. Now in 2020, I think I read 50 something. A lot of those were manga. Well, not a lot, but a bunch of those were manga, and I wanted to see if I could really push myself to read 60 and go beyond that. And while I've still read some manga and some shorter novels, a lot of these books have been tomes. Right now, and we're in November, I'm at 57 of 60 books, so I know, or well, I hope that I'm gonna surpass 60 books this year. I just don't know by how much. So at the end of December, I'll see how many books I've surpassed and maybe using that, setting a goal for 2022. Now, obviously in 2021, there was definitely some lockdowns and it was a lot easier to get reading in because I couldn't leave my house. Now that things have opened up, it's more difficult to get reading in because there's travel happening, there's social activities happening, and though it's not on the same scale that it was before all of this happened, it's still on a more social scale than I'm used to. So hopefully I'll be able to hit 60 books and beyond 60, and I'll see how much I think is feasible for 2022. But at least for that goal, I'm really happy with myself. I wish I had read more. Obviously, we all wish we could read more or do more, but the last few months have been so busy with work and other things that I've only been able to do like 4 to 5 books a month, which I'm happy about, and I think that's why I set the goal of 60 books. So next year I might even use that same goal because it does seem pretty reasonable for the pace of life that I have right now, and that will likely continue. My next reading goal was to read more adult fantasy. Now, I love YA fantasy, it's so much fun, but it's definitely formulaic, and I wanted and I was craving more adult fantasy. I can tell you that I've definitely read more adult fantasy this year than last year. I've certainly read YA fantasy, I've read middle grade, I've read other genres, contemporary and things like that. And obviously I've read some like comics and mangas, but I've definitely read more adult fantasy and more new adult. I categorize new adult with adult because it is kind of just adult, it's not YA. And so I've read quite a bit of that, and I'm pretty happy with myself. That trend is just going to continue into next year, so I don't even think I need to put that as a goal for next year, but I'm happy that I was able to accomplish that goal and move forward with that goal because it was something that I was craving. So it wasn't a super difficult goal to put into motion. There's still a lot of adult fantasy that I'm excited to get into. There's a lot of Brandon Sanderson that I haven't really gotten into, and I am planning and in the process of rereading the Wheel of Time series, which I did read like the first 4 or 5 books when I was younger. I'll be restarting, Robin Hobb series that I did read like 1 or 2 of when I was younger, I believe. And so I'm excited to just get back into those stories and into that kind of more classic 90s type of fantasy that I used to live for. So the next 3rd goal was to diversify my reading, and this one didn't fare so well. I'm still most prominently a fantasy reader. I did incorporate a couple other genres. Like I did read sci-fi, I read Dune, and I read fantasy that incorporated other elements like horror and sci-fi, but branching out into those other genres I haven't done yet. I am still planning on reading that one horror book that I was supposed to read in October and haven't gotten to it yet because I want to vlog that experience and see if I will really enjoy that horror thriller type of book, but I haven't gone so far into diversifying. I've read some sci-fi. I've read some romance, and especially fantasy romance. I haven't really read like romance on its own. I don't know that I would like romance on its own, but I definitely love the fantasy romance subgenre. And I've read, I think, like 1 or 2 contemporaries, maybe 3 contemporaries, which I really love this year, and some poetry, which I also really love. I was able to read 1 nonfiction, but I didn't meet my goal of reading 1 nonfiction a month. I think I read 1 nonfiction in January, and it was a short one, and that was it. But I've gotten a few nonfictions that I really do want to get to, and though they're more dense and they take longer to read, there's a lot of really good wisdom in them. Not that there's not wisdom in fiction and fantasy, because there is. There's a lot of really interesting themes, a lot of things you could learn from, but I do feel like nonfiction is another level of learning that I'm really intrigued by, and I think I really still want to try to incorporate that in just like furthering my learning and then furthering my reading and diversifying my reading in that realm. So didn't do so great in this goal, but I still managed to diversify a little bit, so I'm going to consider it like a half win. My 4th goal was to read more from BIPOC and self-published authors. So I've definitely read more self-published authors this year, and I've definitely read some BIPOC authors. Now, has it been all self-published in BIPOC? No. I've definitely read authors that are not BIPOC or self-published, and those are still great novels, but I have been really excited to see more BIPOC authors come through, join the conversation, have their books be popular and be really well attained and well received. So that's been really great, and I've discovered one new favorite BIPOC author, and possibly a second one, which I'll be discussing next year in my favorite authors that I discovered this year video, and I can't wait to talk about that because I didn't anticipate this, but I've definitely discovered some awesome new authors. So I can say that this goal definitely accomplished. Do I want to pursue this goal again? Of course. I think I'm always going to be pursuing this goal. I definitely want to read more self-published, especially if it's BIPOC self-published. That would be amazing, because there are some really amazing hidden gems that I read this year, which I wouldn't have known about unless other booktubers had shouted them out and made them gain in popularity. So really happy about all those beautiful gems that I read, and some of those are even going to be my favorites of the year, so I can't wait to discuss those next year too. Definitely look for some awesome 2021 like favorites content in the beginning of January, because I think a lot of it's definitely going to come out at that point in time. All right, my 5th goal is reading my own TBR. Now, if you watched my last video, which is a haul, and I talked about the fact that I have all of these books to read, I can very confidently say that I did not accomplish reading my own TBR this year at all. I mean, I definitely read my own physical books, and I read some of the books that had been on my shelf for a while, but I acquired so many more books than I read, and that's kind of embarrassing, but it's definitely true. I will probably go on a book buying ban for December because I really don't need any more books, and I could definitely wait a month. Besides my pre-orders, I could definitely wait a month for those. So hopefully there are no special editions which are going to tempt me. Besides my subscription boxes and my pre-orders, I don't want to add any more books to my list or to my budget, because I have a lot and I need to get through a lot of these. So that's it for the 5 reading goals that I had last year. I didn't put a ton because I really just wanted to enjoy my reading year, and I like that because I think I focused on the most important things to me without stressing myself out, and it really worked out well. I mean, definitely could do better on some of those goals, as we know, but definitely really happy with them. The next set of goals were my top 10 books to read for the year, and then my top 10 series to read for the year. I think they're top 10, either top 10 or 11, I can't remember, but I'll link all of these videos down below, so if you wanted to watch what I did and what I planned for in the beginning of the year, you can definitely find all of those in the description below and then up in the cards as well. So for my top books to read in the year, so far I've read 4 of them out of 11. Yeah, out of 11. So I'm not super upset about that. I'm definitely gonna have 1 more read by the end of the year, so that'll be 5 out of 11. And while I didn't get to all of them, I'm happy with the ones that I got to. Some of these are gonna make the list for 2022, which I haven't read, and some of them I just don't have like a burning interest to read them right now, so they're not gonna make that list, but I am happy with the ones that I read. Those are Crescent City, Master of Sorrows, Warbreaker, and Black Sun. And then I'm reading Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo right now, so that one should be ticked off as well. So for my top series to read, I had 10 series on here, and I've read 1 out of the 10, which was the Shadow and Bone, a trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, which I wanted to read for the show that was coming out, and just to kind of have that in my repertoire, so I knew what the story was about. And plus, the first one was really easy to read, and so was the last one. The second one was not my favorite, but they were just really fun and easy YA books to read, so why not? It was a great time. But the other ones I haven't read, partly because of time and partly because I didn't have as much of a burning interest as I originally thought that I would. So some of these again are gonna make it to next year's series to read list, and some of these are not. I'm still planning on having a books and series to read to kind of guide me. Some of these series I had planned on starting them, and I was very ambitious in that. And while I do acknowledge that that was very ambitious, I am gonna plan to put at least 1 or 2 of the series books on my series to read next year, even if I don't get through the whole series in that year, because some of these books are super duper chunkers. So I guess for my top books to read in the year, I'm like halfway there, so I'm gonna call that a half win. But I really wish I paid more attention to those lists when I was creating my TBRs to see what I could fit in and how I could accomplish them. That obviously didn't happen, but that's okay. And then for the series, I think I just lost interest in some of these. I just heard of other series and really wanted to read them, and while I still want to read a bunch of these, I just haven't gotten to so many of them. But these are still at least a few of them on my radar, so I can't wait to get to them when I finally do. And so I don't know if I'm gonna do a check-in at the end of the year or in January for my 2021 goals, but I'm definitely gonna be setting some new goals for 2022 and starting off on a blank slate and trying to be more mindful of these goals and making sure that I break them down throughout the year instead of just looking at them now being like, oh crap, and then looking at them at the beginning of the year and being like, I'm gonna do everything I can. So definitely stay tuned for that January content. I'm so excited to be putting down new goals and new ideas and new dreams. It's gonna be a great time. If you guys put some goals down for this year, let me know in the comments down below if you were able to accomplish your goals, if you accomplished your reading number goal, which I think a bunch of us already have from what I've seen, if you've read all the books and series you were planning on reading this year, or if you are shifting some of those books over on to next year. And as always, I hope that you liked this video, and if you did, please click on that like button. It does help my channel out a lot. And if you like this content and you want to see more from me, please don't hesitate to subscribe.